Good stuff. Let's talk about the cliffhanger's impact on corporate spending. It is the lead story in the Wall Street Journal today, with half of the nation's 40 biggest spenders already cutting back as if another recession was on the way here or here.
Cato Institute's Dan Mitchell says this action should be expected, that companies need to protect themselves. Michael Mandel of the Progressive Policy Institute couldn't disagree more. He says it's nonsense. Companies are tightening the purse strings when they have so much cash. And Michael, is there any incentive right now? Why do you think that this is poppycock? Why do you think that the fiscal cliff is not leading to uncertainty and hence not leading to companies investing?
Well, let's look at it. Let's take a closer look at spending patterns. What's happening is that tech investment is still rising. In fact, tech investment hit an all-time record in the third quarter. It's non-tech sector, non-tech spending, non-tech investment that's collapsing. And that has a lot more to do with fundamentals than it does to do with the fiscal cliff. What's happening is that this is becoming a data-driven world, so companies continue to spend on technology at record level. At the same time, there's a slowdown globally, which is leading companies to sort of pull back on their spending. So when I look at this, maybe there's an effect of the fiscal cliff, and maybe not. This is these are bigger forces that are going on. You have to look at the technology spending.
Yeah, Dan, what about that? I mean, you don't blame companies that may be hoarding cash to protect themselves in this uncertain environment, but does that mean necessarily that they're likely to spend that cash or put it to work once we get a resolution of the fiscal cliff?
It all depends on how it gets resolved. If Obama gets his way and we get big tax increases on small businesses, but also increased double taxation of dividends and capital gains, we're going to have a less friendly economic environment for investment to occur inside the United States. And that would mean an incentive for companies not to conduct business here, maybe to expand their branches and their operations overseas. So yes, there's the short-term uncertainty of the fiscal cliff that's hurting, but then I actually agree with Michael. It's long-term fundamentals that matter, and our government is just too much of a burden.
Hey, Michelle,
lay out what's at stake here.
I want to talk about two scientists from two different fields. One is Pavlov, the other is Ed Prescott, who won a Nobel Prize for economics. Pavlov taught us the reaction when something happens. A dog will salivate when you put food in front of him. Ed Prescott took that idea, I don't think he mentioned it specifically, but said, you know what? You know when companies spend? They spend after and during recessions when they can count on getting R&D tax credits from the government. That's what happens all the time. They become conditioned to wait for lousy times for that spending to happen. So that's a problem we have with our tax code, which seems to change all the time.
What about that, Mike?
But you've got the data-driven growth happening right now. Companies are spending on technology, they're spending on communications equipment. Well, they have to. Companies like AT&T are pouring billions of dollars into sort of building out their base. It's really important to think about. I mean, I agree with Dan. You have to look at the character of the spending and the cuts. I'd like to see the government focus on investment in human capital investment, physical capital investment, and knowledge capital investment.
Dan, you would love that, right, for the government to focus on those things?
I'm less concerned with the tax code at this point, okay? Because what you have to do is you have to think about where the economy is going.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
In some sense, I agree with Michael. Human and physical capital spending is a lot less destructive for the economy than what public finance economists call transfer and consumption spending. But overwhelmingly, most of what government does is that kind of redistribution spending that is very bad for economic growth. I mean, the fundamental lesson is trend lines matter, and the trend line is that we are becoming more like France, Italy, and Spain, which with each passing year, and Obama, instead of turning the car in the right direction, he's stepping on the gas.
Dan, I think you're overstating the case. We had government spending as a percentage of GDP go from 21% to 24%. In those countries you mentioned, it's 55%. I understand it's up, but magnitude matters as well as trend.
You have to count state and local spending as well. And during the Bush-Obama years, we went from 32% of GDP to 40% of GDP. Guess what? Germany's 42. We're not far behind them. And then, of course, you have France and Italy and Spain.
Dan, you're not
Steve, Dan, and Michael, thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it.